who are no longer bound by NDAs, what are some surprising secrets that you can expose? Story 1. In a tech support role, one manager used to boast his team's average call times were the lowest in the company. While average call times were in the 12-17-minute range, his team was constantly under 10 minutes. His team was awarded multiple times and his strategy was adopted company-wide to all customer service and technical support teams, including our internal IT teams. That strategy was under a strict NDA, as we did not want to allow competitors to emulate it. When our call center would go bid on contracts, it became an awesome metric. Our customer satisfaction scores are on par, but we have call times 20-30 lower than our competitors. The dirty secret of the NDA that I was not allowed to disclose? Their big method? Just hang up on people. Straight up. Find a way to say, okay, go ahead and do that and call back if it doesn't fix it. Then hang up. Don't wait for confirmation. Okay, so reboot your PC and your problem should be solved. Thanks for calling. Click. Eventually, they came out with more useful metrics that tracked things like first call resolution, which absolutely shredded this company and they went out of business a year or two later. Story 2. Manipulation of data. To give false impressions of reliability was something I saw quite blatantly utilized with little repercussions. My company was struggling to meet on-time delivery schedules, and for numerous years was as embarrassingly low as 40. A new manager comes in, and within months we are now boasting an on-time delivery rate on a brilliant 95. Turns out all he did was change what constituted an on-time delivery. Each time we knew a product would be late, we'd notify the customer of the delay and ask them to confirm they still wanted the order. If they still wanted the product, the on-time delivery would be recorded against the new expected date as opposed to the original promised date. Company literature was being sent out boasting of our 95 on-time delivery, now amongst the highest in the industry, when in fact we were by that point meeting less than 30 of initial delivery schedule targets. It was so simple that I'm sure numerous companies are getting away with such underhand tricks. Story 3. The private school I worked for was for students identified with giftedness. The owner of the school administered the giftedness test. Can you pay the tuition? You're gifted. Can your sibling pay? Them too. Your cousin? Neighbor? Kid you know across town? You're all gifted. Story 4. About 20 years I signed an NDA with a very large record company regarding their attempts to get into selling their catalog online, streaming, sales, etc. It was a minefield because they were still wary of off-high street retailers. And that's where the charts came from. These attempts were frustrated by their top-level corporate guys. One week, they all went to an MP3 conference in Buenos Aires to get them up to speed. The thing is, they spent so much time partying the only talk which seemed to stick was the scare tactics about how teens could scrape MP3s from the web, and they could be copied and redistributed easily. When they came back, every item in the catalog was ordered to be scrubbed from the web. No 30-second previews. Nothing should be audible. Not a hint of audio. Lock it all down. Put all the tapes in a chest and seal it with concrete at the bottom of the sea. That's going to make everyone go back to CDs. Good old profitable CDs. Story 5. At my old job, Pam helped me reallocate my clients' ad scheduling so I can invoice out a little extra for the last month of December 2014, helping me hit my yearly budget. I got let go 2 weeks after that, and I believe the original plan was to fire me under the justification of missing my yearly budget. Instead, I got a severance of $15,000. I believe Pam knew or heard what the lay of the land was and helped me out. Appreciate you, Pam. Story 6. I worked at a cancer charity, and half the people would order things for themselves and charge it to the charity. An eye-opening job for a 16-year-old. Story 7. I was never under an NDA, but the hotel is under new ownership, so I guess I can say it now. The hotel had no internet connection starting around 1 a.m. to 6 a.m., like clockwork, every night. IDK if it was just a system fault, or if it was cost-cutting. But without internet, the security cameras didn't work or record anything. The fire alarm system doesn't work, either the alarms go off, but it doesn't call for help. So if we had a fire that started at 3 a.m., for example, then, unless someone else that's driving by calls it in, I have no idea what's happening. One night we had an assault happen in the parking lot. The police needed camera evidence, and our cameras didn't record anything because the internet was out. So that was fun explaining to the detectives. Story 8. I worked for BuzzFeed, and they told us to post on AskReddit and then steal content for our articles. And my BuzzFeed NDA says, I'm not allowed to tell you all that. Story 9. I briefly worked at a university in South Florida in the late 90s and early 00s. I was chosen to be on an academic integrity team, basically reviewing claims of plagiarism and cheating and deciding between the 5 of us whether it is valid or not. We were made to sign NDAs when we accepted the invite to be a part of the team. There were 3 instances where an employee that was taking classes there clearly cheated, and the issue was brought to our attention. Those 3 times, the cheating was blatant. All 3 times we were told to let it go, as it would look bad for the university to have it get out. I'm not sure if this is common for other universities, but at the time, I was under the impression that it was common practice everywhere. It was ultimately one of the main reasons I ended up quitting. I was and still am disgusted by it. Edit. I did not expect this one to blow up the way it did. Just wanted to say that I am loving and cringing at your stories. The seediness is astonishing. Story 10. I worked for a website creation company back in 1999, managing the website for a big brand large bank that was sponsoring a round-trip paid ticket to the Super Bowl. I worked on the website that collected all the entries, and I posted the rules that the company's legal department wrote to describe the rules of the contest. A random winner was to be selected for the prize, and I wrote a software tool to randomly pick the winner to be used when the contest was over. When the contest ended, I was told to forget my tool, forget the rules, just look in the database and find someone in South Florida where the Super Bowl was in 1999 so the company wouldn't have to pay for airfare. Story 11. In Prince George County, Maryland, county transit bus drivers are instructed following an accident they are not to speak to anyone until a supervisor arrives on the scene. An approved method for not talking, especially to other drivers involved, is to feign injury. There's actually money allotted to pay the fines related to wasting 911 and emergency resources, because analysts determined it was cheaper than costs associated with drivers accidentally admitting fault. There's also an entire audit and analysis team related to accidents because of the sheer volume of people who falsely claim to be on a bus during an accident. Edit. What an incredible response. To clarify, the current PG County the bus transit system is run by a company called RATP. They were hired during COVID, which was after I left the state. The company running the buses until 2020 was called Veolia. Story 12. Hasbro has tried to make the following 2 films: Stretch Armstrong, a gritty re-imaging starring Taylor Lautner the Wolf from Twilight with a Nolan's Batman feel Candyland, a Lautner-style epic for children starring Adam Sandler. Both got pitch packets made before ultimately being shelved. Last I heard, the Candyland idea is still kind of alive. Story 13. Fortune 500 real estate. Long time ago. We know about the black mold problem. We always knew. We do not disclose it. We intentionally do not look into. We don't want to know exactly what kind it is, because if it's dangerous, then we legally have to spend money to fix it. The only department that is allowed to talk about the black mold problem is press and PR, because only they know how to bury it correctly. That was not a great work culture. Story 14. IT consultant of many, many winters. The most critical applications in banking, insurance, and finance run on badly outdated machines, hold together by duct tape, prayers, and compress and dust, standing in dark, wet corners in mostly forgotten basements. Also, those systems are written in the most obscure and long-dead programming languages, or even directly in assembler for a certain chipset, written by code wizards in their own idiosyncratic dialects, who are now long retired or even dead. Backups. Backup systems are mostly non-existent, or the data tapes are worn down to basically transparent tape. Even had a case, around 2020, where a cleaning tape from '99 was still in the bay, due to the robot being faulty. If a cleaner or janitor pulls the wrong plug to find an outlet for their vacuum, there is a decent chance that whole branches or even institutions begins to crumble. Most of those systems will also never be updated, due to their legacy status, aka. We don't know what this is doing or even how it is doing, what it is doing, but it is a critical part of our whole infrastructure and nobody dares to touch it. But we will never invest the necessary sums to analyze those systems, write documentation, or even replace them. Edit NDAs for companies I did projects for are long gone, but some of them are currently in an investigation process for fraud and tax evasion, so I won't disclose exact informations. Story 15. Was never bound to an NDA somehow, but sat in to oversee the technical aspects of Herbalife meetings. We're talking meetings with the highest level sellers and their board. They spoke about how to manipulate low-income and unintelligent people to make them millions of dollars, how to teach others to scam others to make them more money. Story 16. Worked in technical customer support for a hardware company. We were sold a bad batch of chips from a supplier. The chips caused random watchdog resets which would cause random crashes reboots. The company got a settlement due to it to remediate it, but the MBA legal types deemed it too expensive to fix what was already in the field, so they fixed it in support. We had very strict talking points when our customers would report this issue. Everyone in the support team knew what the issue was and had each worked several cases of it. But our script made us act stupid, like it was a unique case that had never happened before. It is kind of hard to do that when you have replaced multiple units for the same customer in several weeks. But if you diverted from the talking points, you got counseled by management. This issue caused several very high-level outages issues at many of our customers. We knew why, and we were told to act dumb and bury it in process procedures so we didn't take the hit on needing to replace the known faulty hardware. Story 17 worked at a hospital specializing in cancer care. They were doing something new, actually targeting the type of cancer with the right type of chemo. Most cancer centers do not. So, suppose you get cancer C, but the insurance companies give mandates you get chemo for cancer A/B before treatment for C, as the money increases by like tenfold. Downside for the patient with cancer C is they have to endure way more bouts of chemo than if they just targeted cancer C. So if you ever find yourself in that really bad boat, make sure your doctor's treatment plan is for the right cancer vice for the wrong checkbook. Story 18. Early 2000s. I worked in the clothing department at Walmart, and one night I was handed a memo that I was to secretly cut out all the tags on a list of product that said Made in Myanmar, because the brand was suddenly trying to hide that they were doing business there. I believe it was Hanes. Story 19. Tesla and Rivian electrical components are made in the same facility by a large electronic manufacturer and even share personnel. This once caused Elon to throw a fit and threaten to take the contract somewhere else. The solution? For the next visit, the company separated the lines by a wall and told Elon they had ended the Rivian contract. They still produce both and also the components for the new Ford electric models. Story 20. I worked at a startup that tracked employee happiness, supposedly so they can make employees happier, but in practice it seemed they were preemptively getting rid of unhappy employees. No need to wait for them to quit. Story 21. The lady who owns Columbia Sportswear neglects her animals to the point of death, and then she just buys more. I was supposed to be a caretaker for them, but there weren't even basic med supplies like Bute and Swat or vet wrap. She wouldn't call the vet for almost anything. 2 goats died of malnutrition. Another, its entire hoof fell off. 12 chickens died. 2 mini donkeys died. The guinea pig was kept alone in a hamster cage, and she kept her late husband's dog, Monty, locked in a dog run. Her dogs were permitted out, but not Monty, even on leash. Initially, he was allowed out, and I got with him great shape taking walks every day. But one day she stopped allowing even that. I quit when she started talking about getting 30 sheep and pigs. It was a miserable place, her mansion. I only worked there a year and brought in my own supplies to treat what I could, but it'll always break my heart I couldn't do more. I called animal control multiple times and they never helped, even with the goats who looked like walking skeletons. Rich people can do whatever they want to living things. Story 22. Walmart corporate office puts a screensaver on all their workers' computers with a message urging them to donate to an emergency fund for their FT or near FT warehouse and retail workers, instead of giving them healthcare or PTO. Walmart retail and warehouse workers are kept just below FT, so they can't get benefits, and the vast majority receive government benefits. Your taxes are subsidizing millions in benefits for the richest company in America, so the richest CEO in America is richer. Everything in the second paragraph of this post is public knowledge. Story 23. Intel Corporation used to go around to colleges and hold programming contests, and to the winner, they'd give a mid-grade laptop and a gaudy trophy. Back at corporate, some of these winning code bases would get tens of millions of dollars poured into them in attempts to get them to product release. Story 24. I don't know if I was ever bound by an NDA for this, but I used to work for a contractor for a major US plane manufacturer. They will literally hire anyone. I'm an ancient historian. I do Roman stuff. My experience in flight is limited to sims and being a passenger. They have no standard for aeronautics for their teachers. Their techs I don't know. Story 25. I worked for a company that made DJ equipment, turntables, etc. They put a metal plate in their cheaply made turntables, so they were the same weight as Technics, when in reality they were plastic garbage. Story 26. I worked for a healthcare facility that started collecting private patient information to share with insurance companies in order to secure better contracts. This wasn't diagnosis data. It was lifestyle data, including spending transactions. They were trying to find ways to obtain that information when I was leaving. When I asked if patients were aware, they always gave a vague answer, which essentially meant no. Edited for grammar. Story 27. Taco Bells. Cinnamon twists are made with rice pasta. The moisture content is so high, the water in the pasta boils in the fryer, puffing them up. Then just sprinkle cinnamon sugar on top. Story 28. The Victoria's Secret fashion show in Shanghai in 2017 was an absolute show of corruption, kickbacks, and ups. The Chinese government took VS for an absolute ride for so much stuff, and that's not including all of the middlemen who wanted to get their beaks wet as well. The amount of money that VS spent to have their fashion show in China was astronomical, and got them, at a minimum, investigated by the US government for the amount of bribes they were paying. Story 29. Not under an NDA, but I am not allowed to say this to people. My employer is an HCM company, and the department I work in administers COBRA. For our friends not in the US, COBRA is a law that allows an employee to pay out of pocket to keep benefits they had while they were employed after a separation. This has been a thing since 1986. In many cases, your employer has to reinstate coverage with the carrier. There is no punishment if they do not. They have to inform you of your eligibility within 45 days or face fines with TAMRA, which is part of the IRS. We are not allowed to tell you that your former employer hasn't let the carrier know. We have to take the blame. There are some clients where I work where we do inform the carrier, but carriers like Blue Cross, Anthem, and Cigna are right now refusing to accept the reports we send them, and your coverage remains inactive. But the majority of the time, the client employer is responsible for reporting to the carrier of your COBRA election. There is no maximum time allotted for reinstatement. I've seen cases where the employer-client has not reinstated benefits for 1 year, until the beneficiary tried to use the coverage and was denied, and they had been paying $2,500 a month just for their medical. This was not illegal, just irresponsible. Reinstatements are the #1 issue I deal with, and it's daily. I have tried to get my employer to make an effort to ensure the client reinstated in a timely manner, and they refuse, saying they do not want to anger the client. I've also written letters to President Biden and VP Harris explaining this situation and to present policy. An expansion of TAMRA to include reinstatement deadlines would do wonders. Story 30. I worked at a grocery store. We had lots of prepackaged produce and other baked goods. I was told to pull off all the expiration date stickers and replace them with new dates because they still looked good. There were so many things they did that probably could have gotten them fined heavily if I had known better and reported them. They were a local chain that had like 10 stores. Apparently, they only have 1 store left now and are very close to going out of business for good, according to my parents. Story 31. Well, I signed one with Activision for an advertising campaign many years ago. The big secret that I can reveal now, almost a decade later? Guys, there's going to be another Guitar Hero in 2015. Story 32. Former professor at a Florida State College here. No NDAs, but 1. Claim of sexual harassment not investigated thoroughly, because faculty victim was male and unpopular with administration. 2. President of college twists faculty arms to change semester grades. 3. Faculty initially failed a student for the semester over blatant use of AI to complete writing assignments. The faculty member was coerced into allowing student to rewrite all assignments in the 6 weeks after the end of the term. Story 33. I have worked on many film sets over the years, and by the time the NDA has expired, you've already seen the movie or TV show. In my experience, production NDAs are in place to protect the stories and prevent spoilers from being leaked before the project is released to the public. Story 34. I've seen an early cut of John Wick 2, where all of the animal handlers were running around on screen in green spandex bodysuits, running alongside the horses, carrying leads for the dogs, etc. Just all of these people who are invisible to the actors and the rest of their world. Absolutely surreal. Story 35. I worked at Verizon, and we were told we had to use special offers to try and save customers. An elderly man called to have his wife's phone disconnected after her death, and I didn't do any of the saves. Got called in for QA overview and got written up. Story 36. Former agent for a driving app here. I used to handle the driver's part of the app, and that part was rather messed up because I would often get drivers asking why their accounts were taken down. I stopped being surprised after realizing that for every 3 drivers that reached out or so, 2 among them were shut down, either for fraudulent activity or for mostly sexual misconduct. Frauds include starting and stopping without the rider, messing with the GPS to charge the rider with surcharges, especially on airports, or attempting to upload bogus or edited documents. About this one, it was disgustingly easy to bypass the docs filter, because there were plenty of countries where the app worked that didn't run background checks. On top of that, privacy policies wouldn't let us disclose the cause of the deactivation either, thus resulting in drivers often trying to sneak back into action with a duplicate account, only for me to laugh in their faces when finding out they were stonewalled because of their original account. On the other hand, there were a handful of drivers who presumably didn't do a thing wrong. But then again, Policies would leave our hands tied and we had to give out the bad news anyway, if you know what I mean. You'll maybe edit this comment if I can remember more. It's been about 5 years since I stopped working there. ETA. I just remembered another one. Incidents involving sexual assaults, murder, altercations and the like were handled by another team elsewhere, and we had strict orders never to disclose such incidents with whoever asks about the matter. Since this type of incidents would compromise the company's reputation, we barely had any new updates about them, or no updates at all, instead finding out through news circulating about. This is how I found out about most of the incidents. A fraction involving females being sexually assaulted or murdered in the worst of cases. Another fraction involving app drivers being involved in altercations with local taxicab drivers demanding to GTFO and resorting to attack the driver if their demands aren't fulfilled. The last fraction of incidents involves drivers being mugged or killed by organized crime. This is also relevant as drivers are often unprotected when in such scenario. Story 37. I worked for a company who worked for a company who worked for Cisco Networking. Cisco had created a new product for small business, basically a cheaper version of their normal routers and switches. When hired, I was one of about 20 people, most of whom had zero networking experience. We were told that it was done that way because they wanted non-techies specifically learning the product. This made no sense to me. We were told that we had to get CCNA certifications before we could go live. We were then given a month of bootcamp training and personal study sessions. It took about 2 months and a few tries for everyone to get the certification. The problem was that we were 20 kids, with little to no technical or networking experience. Working on a new product that we technically weren't versed in, we were given generic CCNA training and no training on the product itself, and expected to handle all tech support for the entire country. I once had a call to fix a connectivity issue for a chain of banks. The guy who called me admitted to making $450 an hour and asked me to take my time solving his issue. He called the guy making $20 an hour. Believe it or not, it was the classic tech support question, is it plugged in? That solved his issue. He forgot to plug in the power. I'm not sure why this was supposed to be tied to other banks, but I'm guessing that it was at a main hub and something wasn't going out to the branches or something I didn't ask. 90 of the employees on that team quit within the first 3 months of working there. Story 38. A ridiculous percentage of the U.S. bullets are made in Grand Island, Nebraska. Not just the red boxes, either just about every company has a large amount of bullets made for them there. Sierra and Nosler being the two exceptions. The only difference most of the time is the color of the tips. Wouldn't be so bad, but the equipment is WW vintage and falling apart, security and safety are half-assed, and they chase off anyone that won't work 70-hour weeks. Story 39. I posted the same question 10 hours ago but got no replies. I don't know how AskReddit works. Story 40. Not really exposing a secret here, but I am disgusted by it. My job requires me to look into the minutes of meetings. One of my clients was a school. During one of the meetings with the board of directors and the parents, they addressed the bullying in the school. One of the parents said, "Just leave it. Let the weak ones fall out." And that was the end of it. Story 41. Used to work for government. One of the department heads didn't realize his mic was still on during a meeting break and said some less than flattering things about his colleagues. He came to me the next day and wanted it removed from the tape and made it very clear that my career would be limited if I didn't obliged. I obliged, though I had already made a copy to my personal server earlier that morning just to have leverage in the future should I need it. Story 42. Danny DeVito has a longtime agent manager who, unbeknownst to him, is a racist. She apparently doesn't realize all the calls are recorded, so there's years of her saying some up to people in a certain office. He, on the other hand, is a really decent chap. Story 43. I used to work in packaging, and there was a big promotion coming up for the 18 World Cup. Basically, the beverage company we were working with thought they'd be able to sell more of their product if they were able to correctly predict the winning team to use for their promotion when the winner was actually revealed. Obviously, if you waited for the champion to be revealed, it would be too late. The supply chain has got to start well in advance. Basically, the beverage company did correctly guess champion team, and a lot of people involved in this deal had to sign NDAs, basically stipulating that they couldn't go around shouting, "I know France are going to win, because XYZ company have asked us to print all this France merch in advance, etc., etc." You don't have to be Nostradamus to guess the champion of the World Cup, but it's the fact the company we were dealing with were suspiciously certain of it, along with the secrecy surrounding this knowledge. Story 44. I worked for Hewlett-Packard about 15 years ago testing all their printers. I had to sign a 10-year NDA saying I wouldn't reveal their trade secrets. Their printers sucked then, and they now too. I'm not an engineer, so I could never tell you how the printers work anyway, or rather don't work. Story 45. No great secret here, but the beverage industry is absolutely cutthroat. If you think about it, you'll never walk into a Walmart that doesn't have both Coke and Pepsi or Budweiser and Coors, etc. To that end, if you work for Coke, you'll never get rid of Pepsi. You'll never convince your clients the stores to stop carrying those core brands. So the battle shifts to whatever odd flavor of vanilla cranberry Sprite or Diet Extreme Mountain Dew they can concoct. They'll always have 3 shelves of Coke and 3 of Pepsi. But the battle is all for that one shelf of the new experimental or seasonal flavors. Because beating the competition means winning this tiny battle in the overall war, they get absolutely toxic on their own employees to execute. 16-hour shifts, unreasonable expectations, long hours, unsafe working conditions, etc. The list goes on. They work union employees hourly to 39.99999 hours and then clock them out automatically. They'll make a salaried office worker drive by a 7-Eleven after work and restock some items. We're talking like an office accountant, not someone who works in the sales or delivery functions. They'll pull an HR rep out of meetings to go construct a Santa Claus train out of soda boxes at Kroger because the hourly union guy hit his time for the week. With most jobs, if you need an hour for a doctor's appointment, it's not too much hassle as long as you cover your responsibilities. Not this business. Employees were given iPhones or iPads that were low-jacked with GPS tracking. If you ventured off route too long, automatic write-up. If you took too long in a store, you were written up for a delay. If you cleared a store too quickly, you were written up for not schmoozing the store manager more and selling them more seasonal flavors. The entire system is designed to work people to the point of exhaustion, ding them for every single thing, and then essentially blackmail them with the threat of being fired. Everyone is on a perpetual performance plan. There was a bounty system. Employees got reimbursed to narc on other employees. Visit a store on the weekend and see some product out of place? Rat out the guy who runs that route and you'll get a 25 coffee card. Never mind the fact that it's Saturday and the product was probably misplaced by a grocery store worker or even a lazy shopper setting beer back in the diaper aisle. Every aspect of that business is designed to give the employer absolute control and complete freedom to fire you on a whim. In good economies, they'll turn over staff like socks because there are always a million more idiots looking for the prestige of working for a Fortune 500 beverage company. In bad economies, they know they can't backfill, so they'll browbeat you into submission, knowing that you can't find another job. I could write a book on this industry, and here's the kicker. I was a manager there for 1 year. That's all it took, so see the ugliness. Story 46. Feels weird posting this as I'm a big-time lurker, and not technically under any NDA, but I was working for a medical devices company where the financial director was also the production director, who instructed the production teams to use a prototype calibration machine for their main product, neonatal ventilators. The electronic engineer who designed the prototype was not happy, rightly caused a big fuss and ended up resigning. That guy was an absolute hero. Big respect. That company kind of shattered my perspective on ethical engineering roles, and I ended up changing industry. Story 47. My wife used to be an associate in a well-known multi-level marketing company. I won't say which one. She dragged me along to one of their How to Get Rich in This Business seminars, where someone way up in the pyramid was speaking. The speaker at one point was advising the audience on how to commit tax fraud by deducting everything imaginable and then some on your taxes as business expenses. Some of it was borderline, but a lot of it was just straight-up tax evasion. My wife was still in her true believer phase at that point and thought the secrets of the universe had been revealed to her. We argued about it for a couple weeks afterwards until she finally agreed to ask our tax guy about it. And he basically said, LOL, that's totally fraud. I hope you like the color orange. Worst part was the reason the speaker was advising everyone to commit tax fraud was so you can invest more back into your business, which translated from MLM speak means, keep pumping money into the pyramid and making us rich, suckers. Story 48. Many years ago, my dad was manager of the meat depot at a chain grocery store. A new store manager came in and told him that whenever steaks started looking a bit gray, rather than mark them down a bit, they were still okay to eat, just older and unappealing in appearance. He was to slice them laterally and position the bright pink interior up to repackage and keep them the same price. My dad soon quit over that, as he couldn't in good conscience do it. Story 49. A mortgage company I worked for shut down because they lost Fannie and Freddie backing. The CEO told us it was because of 3 loans that shouldn't have resulted in this punishment at all. It was his son. It was vastly more than 3 loans. And it is so bad he has permanently lost his license to be a loan officer. Story 50. There's a government in East Asia that was or still is running a low-key sterilization campaign in Central and Eastern Africa. They do it in partnership with a private company I used to work for. I was sworn in on the project in September 2013. I was with the company until late 2017 and had to sign an NDA that I wouldn't say anything. The NDA didn't specifically mention sterilization, but instead, the methods used. The company I worked for with funding from this particular East Asian government set up free clinics in half a dozen or so African nations and offered free healthcare to the locals. Naturally, they went for it, because they were getting much better quality of healthcare than they had ever gotten before. They were baited with the quality treatment and then sterilized without their knowledge. The methods used were non-surgical, and the company I worked for was given a quota of 30,000 to 50,000 sterilizations a year by the government funding the project. I don't know if they're still running the program, the company is still in business, but I don't know if they've still got the contract or if some competitor offered a better deal to that particular East Asian government. This is as far as I'm willing to go on the details. Story 51. I know of at least 3 major, and I mean major, Superfund level pollution of very toxic materials, environmental disasters that are completely unknown because they took place on private property, and the companies that did it are covering it up. Often, this means that the company owns a tract of land that they keep fenced off and empty. As long as they don't sell it, nobody needs to test the soil. Having a good understanding of what happens to whistleblowers, regardless of NDA, I won't name the companies. I don't need to get forcibly suicided. Story 52. My colleagues and I were asked to alter audit reports at a nuclear power plant in Mississippi. All 3 colleagues quit shortly thereafter, and one of them signed an NDA for thousands of dollars. I was fired. Feds stated they did not talk to the auditors as part of their investigation when I made a similar contemporary retaliation complaint in writing. I was offered an NDA payout, but decided to testify instead. They will probably announce more settlement from the case I testified in soon. Story 53. Every single cooking competition show you watch is rigged. The judges have no say over who wins. The winner is chosen prior to filming by the executive producers, and then the show is crafted around that winner to mimic a story or journey they can sell to audiences. Story 54. I used to work for an ocean container company. Employees are laid off based in large part to anonymous surveys. These surveys are outsourced paid to conduct them. Each survey is assigned a link that's directly linked to that employee's IPVPN. If the survey is generally negative, that employee is either placed on a PIP or is laid off. This specific company has forced their managers to have 100 completion or their roles are on the line. Bottom line, LI. Always lie on them. Story 55. Y'all would be surprised at the amount of investment in commercial real estate the Saudis have in this country. I was under an NDA to not discuss the financial backer of a massive project, valued at the time of around $448,089 here in the DC area. In the same land deal, our firm and those that had to work on the project had to have an NDA for the sale of a large chunk of land in the same development to a company that doesn't exist that built a massive data center next to the massive data centers in the DC area. We were given more than market value for the land and told not to talk about it. We just amended our site plans and scratched that section off the plan.